This morning, I want to share with you the stories of a few fairly remarkable individuals. The first one I imagine everyone in this room knows. He was a young man born in Winnipeg who was diagnosed with cancer at the age of just 18. He had to have his leg amputated just above the knee. And yet within 2 years of that diagnosis, he went on to run his first marathon. The following year, he embarked on a personal mission to run across all of Canada. Beginning his journey in St. John's, he dipped his right leg in the Atlantic and began the day-by-day running 42 kilometers, or 26 miles, a marathon. And he was doing this to raise money for cancer research after his own experience and seeing the fate of so many others. You know, this man is Terry Fox. He didn't receive a lot of support early on, but he had a dream and a vision, and he didn't let that stop him. And as he started to gain support, he continued to run each day, through cold, through rain, through snow, through heat, through pain, through blisters. He spread awareness, he raised support and funds for cancer research, and perhaps most of all, he shared hope with so many. When he arrived in Toronto, he was greeted with a crowd of over 10,000 people. I imagine some of you may have seen this firsthand. Some of you may have watched this on the news as it was happening. And I can only imagine how inspiring that must have been to witness. The Canadian Cancer Society collected over 100,000 donations just that single day. He'd begun his run on April 12th, but September 1st of that year, he was taken to the hospital, where he learned that his cancer had returned to his lungs and he would not be able to finish his run. After 143 days, 5,373 kilometers, or 3,339 miles, he had raised over $1.7 million for research. A nationwide telethon the following week raised another $10.5 million, and by the following year, over $23 million had been raised. The annual charity run that was set up in his honor has become the largest single-day fundraiser for cancer research in the world, since it began raising over $850 million, helping to help many of those who suffer from this terrible disease, helping to fund research and advances that has saved countless lives. I want to share with you another story. This is a young woman born in Warsaw in 1910. She was a social worker by trade. After the Nazis invaded, she joined the Polish underground and worked to help bring supplies and smuggle things into the ghetto that the Jewish community needed to help protect them from the Nazis' plan. As the war went on, the Nazis began to carry out the final solution. She would enter the ghetto and help smuggle children out to safety, giving them new lives and identities. While the exact number is unknown, it's estimated that Irina Sendler, that was her name, and her associates rescued over 2,500 Jewish children from the Nazis. Risking her own life, she put it on the line for strangers. She kept meticulous records that after the war, these Jewish children who had been given new names, often raised in Christian monasteries and by monks and nuns, would be able to be found and brought back to their families and relatives, those who had survived. She kept meticulous records that could be done. When she was arrested by the Nazis, she refused to give them up. She was interrogated by the Gestapo and even sentenced to death, refusing to give up the names of the children that she saved, or the locations of those she worked with. I want to share one more story of someone that did something remarkable. It was June 5th, 1989. In Tiananmen Square, the day after a violent crackdown on protesters by the Chinese government, a man holding just a shopping bag stood in front of a line of tanks in protest. The tanks moved to the side to get around him, and what did he do? He moved too. They moved the other direction, and he went that way, refusing to get out of their way. Finally, after he was brought away in the crowd, And nobody's quite sure what had happened to him, if it was his friends that pulled him away or secret police. No one knows his identity to this day. No one is sure who is that man in Tiananmen Square. But all of us know that famous image. And all of us know the symbol that he stands for, of resistance, of hope, of courage. He's been an inspiration to countless others, not only in China, but around the world who have fought and struggled for freedom. He's been an inspiration to so many what the human spirit can do. All three of these stories that I shared with you are just regular people. Regular people who did something remarkable. Not just for themselves, but inspired something, a legacy that went on for others. And I share that because tomorrow night we begin the holiday of Hanukkah. And it's really one of my favorite holidays. In this month of darkness, in this time of the year when it is cold, when the days are short, when hope sometimes seems distant and far away, we celebrate a holiday of light. Remembering the Maccabees who stood up in defiance to the greatest military regime of their generation. A band of not fighters, but teachers, tradesmen, just average citizens stood up. But they had hope. And that hope has lasted us so many generations since. As we celebrate Hanukkah, remembering this, lighting our Hanukkah, we take the Shamash, one candle with which we light all others. And there's a remarkable lesson in that. We begin on the first night lighting one light, on the next 2, then 3, then 4, till the final night we light 8 other candles with that one single flame. And that candle that we light with, the Shamash, its flame, its brightness, doesn't get any dimmer when it lights another candle. In fact, collectively, we watch throughout those 8 days as our Hanukkah gets brighter and brighter, as the Shamash shares its light, its flame, its warmth with the other candles. The 3 people that I mentioned, they're people that brought something from themselves into the world. They shared their warmth, their light, their inspiration. And they helped not only to make a difference right in front of them, but that was a difference that's been passed down. Well, we know 2 of their names. The other one, we don't know his name, the man in Tiananmen Square, Tank Man, but we know his picture. The truth is, there are so many others whose names we've forgotten, whose stories we never were told or taught to even begin to try to remember them, but who have shared their light, who have inspired others, who have been a part of that journey. It was a couple months after his amputation that a coach approached Terry Fox to join the handicapped basketball team. Who knows if he would have gone back to athletics if no one had asked him to give it a try. Irina Sedler credits what she did, the necessity of it, putting her life on the line due to the colleagues and the kindness and warmth that her Jewish colleagues who were forced into the ghetto had shown her when they worked together. How could she sit by when her friends had this happen to them? The truth is, though, many others sat by, but something inspired her. Person or persons. There are so many in our lives who've impacted us in ways we don't even recognize. And there's so many that we impact. In our Parsha today, Joseph goes out into the field in search of his brothers. He's not sure where they are and he can't find them. And what happens? He comes upon a man who directs him where his brothers have gone. And that puts into effect everything that happens afterwards. Being thrown in the pit, sold into slavery, tossed into prison, eventually rising up to head of all of Egypt, leading not just the Egyptians from the famine, but saving his family and other nations too. Does anyone know the name of that man in the Torah who points out the direction? The Torah doesn't tell us. He's simply Ish, a man. But one act had incredible impact. For better, for worse, it had consequences. We often think of big moments being what makes a difference, of certain people who can somehow impact the entire world, who can impact generations that will come after them. And we look around as we read these stories and we think that these are people who can't be us. There's something special about them. But all of them started out as just an ordinary individual. We may not ever know if we've made an extraordinary contribution. But if we live each moment recognizing that we can share what we have with others, our light, our warmth, our kindness, like the Shamash. If we recognize that even an unnamed person in the Torah, a man whose story is simply like the scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz pointing in a direction, can make an impact that would forever change the history of the Jewish nation. We can recognize that we too can make that difference. We too can do something really special. So in this time of coldness, of darkness, I think this is an important lesson our tradition gives us to share with others. I'll end with, in the beginning of the Ve'ahavta, tells us that we should serve the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, and umeodecha. We often translate that as with all our might. But anyone who speaks Hebrew knows that meodecha doesn't really mean with all your might. Me'od. Me'od is something that's a lot of something. Very, much. All of your muchness. The rabbis interpret that as a reminder that each of us has something special about us. And that we should serve God by sharing meodecha. Whatever that specialness, that uniqueness, that muchness, whatever makes us us. Whatever we can do better than anyone else. Maybe it's business. Maybe it's leadership. Maybe it's just kindness and compassion. Or the ability to make someone else smile and to brighten someone's day. But that we serve God by sharing that with the world and spreading it around. And the lesson from these three stories we looked at from our Parsha is that if we do that, we share what makes us unique and special with others, we can really make an impact. We can really change the world. Shabbat Shalom.